Hey everybody, so the following video is pretty long. It's like 45 minutes long, something like that, but I go into a lot of detail about removing and replacing the exhaust manifold. So this is just going to be a quick 1 or 2 minute quick video. I'm going to show you exactly what I did without doing any of it and how to do it. It's really a pretty quick, well, maybe not quick, but fairly simple job that you can probably do yourself if you have the basic knowledge, you know. The only thing that you might have to worry about is breaking bolts, but I explain all that in the video. I didn't break any bolts, thankfully, so let's get right into it. Here we go. Okay, so what you need to do, there's 12 bolts right here. There's 6 up on top, 6 on the bottom. Each bolt has a sleeve. Don't lose those sleeves. Those sleeves are 11 or 12 bucks a piece, so you can reuse those. Get new bolts, reuse the sleeves. You're going to get new studs. When you get new studs, get new nuts, because they don't come with the nuts. Save them, or sorry, just save them and reuse the nuts, or get new ones, whatever. It's a 2-part manifold, so this is a 4-port. The 2-port is up here. They just slide together. There's no bushing, there's no anything in between the 2 halves. You're going to undo this band clamp. You're going to undo this band clamp, push the air intake forward. This right here is pretty solid, so you're not going to be able to move this too much. There's solid oil tubes here and on the bottom, so the turbo isn't going to move very much. You're going to get just enough play when you get the nuts off of here and everything, all the bolts out. You know, you can wiggle this just enough to get the manifold out. Now, to put it back in, I put a strap around it, and I used a pry bar up through the strap, and I put the pry bar up here, and I use this as leverage to manipulate the turbo to get the bolt holes to line up. You got a gasket in between each port and the exhaust manifold. There's a gasket here. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. I soaked these bolts while I was waiting for the parts for about, I don't know, a week and a half, something like that. I used a mixture of 50% acetone and 50% automatic transmission fluid. Mix those together, and I soaked these every single day. I'd come out here and I'd just squirt them down a little bit, you know, just to get the penetrant into the bolts as much as I could. Sorry about that. That's Lucy. She's being Lucy. And that seemed to work very well. I did not break any bolts. So before I put the manifold back on, I took a tap and I went through all the bolt holes just to clean them up. You don't really have to do that. It's just something extra that I do just because. I took my Never Sees, I sprayed inside all the bolt holes, used a Q-tip to make sure I really coated the threads, put Never Sees on the threads of the bolt. Again, that's overkill, but if I have to take this thing off again, I'm going to be doing it, so I want to make sure that it comes apart. As you can see, you know, the silver, I did the same thing to the nuts. Other than that, it's a pretty straightforward, pretty easy repair, providing that you don't break any bolts. And if you do, this engine, this configuration, everything here is really wide open, so if I did happen to snap a bolt, I don't think I would have had too much of a problem getting it out. So, you know, you can do this yourself and you can save a lot of money. So I hope that this video helped. If you want to know more, watch the longer video, and I get really in depth with it. Hey everybody, so a few weeks ago I discovered a crack in my exhaust manifold. It's the crack that I found. And that's pretty typical from what I understand about these ISLs. The manifold will crack, usually right there. So I'm pretty fortunate this rig is set up in a way that everything is really accessible and real easy to get to. I've done a lot of research on actually penetrance on breaking down the rust, and hopefully I don't break any bolts. But if I do, I'm ready for that too. So it's, you know, I'm not going to say it's not a big deal, but you know, we'll deal with whatever comes along. So for the past, oh God, week and a half or so, I've been waiting for the parts. Every day I come out here with my little squeeze bottle, and I fill this up with a homemade mixture of 50% acetone and 50% automatic transmission fluid. Do some research, check it out. Just Google acetone and ATF penetrant. Everything that everybody says, it's by far the best penetrating oil that you can get. So fingers crossed, hopefully everything goes smooth. So I'm going to walk you through this real quick, and I'll hopefully loosen up a couple of bolts and get the process of getting this thing taken off. So this is the manifold. In preparation to start taking these bolts out, I fired up the engine and let it run for just a few minutes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes maybe. Hopefully that'll heat the head up. Well, not hopefully, I know that it will, but not the bolt. So, you know, if you can heat up the head and expand that and kind of keep the heat away from the bolt, that should help to break those bolts out of there without breaking them. So let's get to it. So I just got a breaker bar with my 13mm socket. I can't find my shorty for some reason, so I got to use the deep well. I have a short, but it's a 12 point, and I don't want to use a 12 point to break the socket or break the connection bolts. Another thing that you can also try to do is to shock them a little bit by tapping on them. I have a BFH, but I don't have a whole lot of room for this one, so that's why I'm not using that one. I'm sure that you heard that. So that's just the initial breaking free of the bolt. It just turned just a hair. So now I'm going to tighten it up and loosen it and tighten it and loosen it, and hopefully we won't have any issues. Okay, you heard that? I felt it move a little bit. So it's moving. It's moving little by little. Try to get it to move just a little bit more each time. So oh, there we go. Don't be scared. Go. All right, come on, baby. Well, let me do this first. Oh wow. Well, that was the first time that I touched that bolt, and she broke right easy. Yeah, so that doesn't give me a whole lot of room to kind of crank on this thing. All right, so let's give this a shot. I just felt it move, but I didn't hear anything, which worries me a little bit. Put a little light on there just so I can really see. Okay. Okay, got that one. So I got all the top ones done loose. Now I have to deal with the bottom ones. And it's really going to be the same process, so I'm not going to go through all that on camera. I will be back when something happens. Either something good or something bad. So all the other ones, all the bottom bolts have loosened up fairly easily. This part of the video is only maybe 5 minutes after I ended the previous one. I'm having trouble with one bolt, and I just want to show it to you real quick. It's more of an access problem. So what's going on is the bottom part, or the bottom bolt to this one right here, this one's loose. The bottom bolt, which is right under here, is being hampered by the oil line for the turbo. So there's not a whole lot of room right here for me to get my socket and breaker bar in there. So that's a hard line. You know, it's always an option to take it off. You have to remove it from here and right down in there, right there. But that is not at all what I want to do, obviously. So I told you I'd update you if there was anything different, and that's what I'm dealing with right now. So when I figure that out and get that one loose, I'll be back. All right, well, that sucked, but I got it out. It was just a lot of contorting my hands and using a couple of different sockets and wobblers and universal, all just, but anyways, I got it out. So let's take out the rest of the bolts. Woohoo! I know you can't really see those, but alright, that's the last one. So all the nuts, all the bolts are out. Hey everybody, so after I got it off, I noticed the crack had gone all the way underneath, and it was a full 50% of the circumference that was cracked. So it's a good thing that I did, and I just didn't, you know, have it welded in place. So just because it's not really necessary probably, but since I've got them off, I'm gonna go ahead and go through all the bolt holes with a tap. I got this from Home Depot, I think. Mine are a 10 mil 1.5 thread. So I took a bolt in and I matched it up to make sure that I got the right tap. So I'm just going to take this tap, never mind that drill bit, it's the only way you could buy it. So I'm just going to take the tap and I'm going to run it through all the bolt holes just to clean them up, make sure that they're all good, and then I'm going to start putting this thing back together. So let's check it out. So as you can see, I have a ton of room in here to work with. This is the head where the manifold goes onto. That is the turbo right there. That's where the turbo attaches. So there's two bolts there. There's two bolts on the the manifold head, which I have to install. So I had to release this band clamp right here and this clamp up here to loosen up this turbo. I mean, you can see that it only moves just a little bit. There's a couple of oil lines, well, more than a couple. There's basically a solid oil line here. There's an oil line down here, a couple here, that all hold this turbo in place. So you don't have a whole lot of room to really wiggle this thing. But you have to take those off to get that exhaust head off, because you have these two bolts, and on the exhaust manifold there's two bolts that stick down through here. So that makes a pretty solid connection. You know, you can't pull it up like this because it has to come off like this, because you got the block in the way. So that's just what I did. So let's take a look. Before I put these back on, I'm trying to get you some light here. I am going to just clean up these ports with a wire brush. Now, before I did this, I took my vacuum and I vacuumed up any kind of debris that was here, any kind of anything, to prevent it from getting down into the head. And after I get done, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just checking to make sure that there's no big bumps or anything that would mess with the seal. Okay, so I'm just going to show you real quick how I clean up the bolt holes. And like I said, this isn't really something that really needs to be done. I just like making a whole lot of extra work for myself, and it makes me feel better. So you just take your tap and you start it in nice and easy until it doesn't really go anymore. Okay, it's going to get a little tight. You just take your ratchet and you run it in. So all this is doing is just like cleaning up the threads, you know, making sure there's no gunk in there, making sure the threads are nice and crisp. And go down to the end, bottom it out. You don't want to put a whole lot of pressure on it. And you just take it out. Now you can do this with your bolts if you want. I just like to do it with a tap. So all the dirt and grime. It's really important to make sure that it's seated properly, because you don't want to mess up your threads. If you're not sure about doing this, don't do it. Just put your bolts back in and you'll be fine. Make sure that you use anti-seize. I've been doing a lot of research online, and actually plain milk of magnesia. Yep, milk of magnesia is what they use apparently in aircraft engines, in the afterburner in really hot areas as an anti-seize. You get regular milk of magnesia, you dip your bolts in it, and it dries out to a powder and is a really good anti-seize. All the junk. You can see a little bit of the dirt and grime down here too. So I'll vacuum those up. When I get done, I'm going to vacuum out all the holes again, get all the crap out of there, and then I'm probably going to take some anti-seize and throw it in there just to make sure that it's all well coated. But we'll be back when that happens. So that's the 4. Oh, here's the 2. And the 2 spots right here. So what I did, I took it to a machinist and I asked him just to ensure that all 6 cylinders were flat and level and even. And you do that by putting it on a flat level surface and trying to push a feeler gauge underneath it. These actually came from the factory. He said that he wouldn't do a thing to them. He was ready. I thought that he was going to have to machine them. Some people put them on a belt sander and just touch all of them at the same time so that they're all nice, flat, and level. He put it on his level, I don't even know what they're called, a flat plate, level plate. Basically, it's a piece of granite that's perfectly flat and perfectly level. So he put them on there, and he couldn't get a 1.5 thousandths feeler gauge under it. So that's really good. So I'm really happy he didn't have to do anything with it, and it cost me a bottle of gin. So I'm really comfortable that when I put this on and put the gaskets in, that everything is going to be good. I'm getting ready to put the exhaust manifold back on, and what I did prior to that is I took my anti-seize, which I have in a spray can. Make sure you shake this stuff up really good, and it has obviously the tube on it. And I just take the tube, stick it in the bolt hole, and spray to make sure that all those threads are nicely coated. When I get done with that, I go through with a Q-tip, which are right there, and I stick the Q-tip all the way in and get out all the excess, and I make sure that the threads are really well coated. I'm also going to coat the threads on the bolts because I overdo things like that. So you would never find a shop that would go through all this hassle. Chances are they're never going to work on it again. If something happens and I have to remove this exhaust manifold again, it's going to be me that's doing it. So I'd rather go overkill, and hopefully if I have to take them off again, I won't have any problems with the bolts. So that's what I do. So this is where the 2 manifold bolts stud in. As you can see, I've already done one. This is what they look like. This is the part that goes through the exhaust, or the turbo, and that's where the nut will go on. This is the part that gets threaded in. So I have a bag that I use if I have to spray my anti-seize. Just because, like I said, this stuff will get on everything. A little bit on there. Wipe it off. Get rid of that. So there's the stud. And that just threads in. Like I said, I like to make sure that those threads are nice and coated. So if I ever have to tackle this thing again, I'm not going to have too much of a problem. So how do you tighten this down? Well, you take two of your nuts, no jokes, and you thread it down. So I've tried using these as a lock nut. You know, use the two, build them up, but when I tried tightening it down, this just spins down anyways. So I flip it upside down, put it all the way down. The last thing that you want to do is have this thing trying to dig into the uncut metal. So you lock it down like that. And you just torque on it. Yep, I know that they're both moving. But if you can if you can loosen up and take off the nuts without that stud moving, you're good. So as I loosen this up, because I know that it's bottomed out, I'm going to watch the stud right here to make sure that it doesn't move, which it isn't. So this one, you kind of flatten the threads out on your nut because you're driving it into the meaty part here that's not threaded. So you really have to use your wrench to back it out. You mess up the threads a little bit, but it's not a big deal. And doing it like that because I actually have to put a little bit of pressure on, torquing that thing out a little bit. That stud's not moving, so I know that it's good. It's in there, good. So I'm going to put those over there. Let me show you what we got in our box for parts to do this job. Obviously we have the exhaust manifold. This is a split manifold. The back side here has 4 ports. The front side has 2 ports, and this will just slide in there like that when we go to put it on. So, in our box of goodies, we have 12 new bolts. This is the gasket for the turbo. We have 6 new gaskets for the exhaust ports. And these spacers, I'm just reusing these. You can see that they're all, you know, a little bit rusty and stuff. But all they are is a steel spacer. And these things, they're like 11 or 12 bucks a piece, each of them. So I'm just going to reuse them because that's all they are, is a spacer, and they're fine. Like I said, the bolts are new, the studs are new, so that's what I'm going to do. All right, let's get this thing put together.
My hands a little bit, but you know what I'm used to doing that. It's like putting too much makeup on the camera to see your face. And you start reflecting, you know, really trying to encourage those entrepreneurs like Steve, who's just opened up.
I know that you just saw only my shoulder, but I just put the 2-cylinder head on. I just started the bolts just a little bit. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work. I'm probably going to have to take them off. So. So I've only got 3% battery, so I'm really trying to do this. I won't even connect to my phone. So I'm trying to do this. So you guys can see it. Okay, well, I've got it all in. Unfortunately, the battery in the GoPro went dead and it wouldn't shoot when it was on the charger. So, and my phone, I couldn't get the right angles, so I just put the GoPro on the charger and went ahead and did the installation. So I'm going to talk you through what I did and how I got everything together. So let's take a look. So this bolt right under here, the other bolt on the other side of this one is by far the most challenging because you have this line in the way. So if you go underneath, you can access it a little bit easier, but everything else was pretty much right out there and pretty easy to do. So in order to get the manifold off, I had to loosen up the turbo. This is the turbo. I had to take off this band clamp and this band clamp up here, and once I did that, I was able to push that out of the way and kind of wiggle the turbo down a little bit to allow the exhaust to come out. The opposite for the installation. You have these two bolts that are attached to the turbo. There's two bolts that I showed you on the underside that are attached to the exhaust manifold. To get those four to line up properly is a little bit of a challenge. You don't really need to put the bolts in. When I first put the bolts in, I forgot to put the spacers in. So I put all these bolts on, and I was holding the the gaskets in place with the bolts, but I forgot to put all the spacers in. So whatever, so I had to take them all off. So you really don't need to put these in to hold the gaskets on. Just forget about those when you're putting it in, when you're installing it. Get these two and the two on the bottom, get those 4 bolts lined up, get it set in there a little bit. You know, you're gonna have to wiggle this. I had to put a strap around here, and well, you can see the mark up here. Don't tell Joy about that, she'll be pissed. So I had to put a strap around here and use that for leverage, because you have all these steel hoses that are kind of fighting you. So I had to wiggle that, and by doing that I was able to get all these 4 bolts aligned. And once I got them in, I put the 2 nuts up on the top here, and that was good. So if you can see these 2 nuts, they're new. There's a reason that they're new, because they are new. When you buy the replacement studs, they do not come with the nuts. So I had to go back to Cummins and buy 2 nuts. These 2 nuts were $7, $3.50 a piece, just so you know. So when you buy all your hardware, make sure you get the nuts. I threw mine out, so it is what it is. So there's a specific torque and a specific torque sequence that you have to follow when you reinstall your manifold. I called Cummins. If you have a Cummins, you can get on their website, cumminscare.com. You can register your engine, and you can download all the manuals and everything else like that. For some reason I'm having a problem, so they emailed me the torque specs, which are 39 foot-pounds per bolt, and the sequence starts with this bolt down here, the one underneath this. So that's number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, that's number 4, this one down here is number 5, 6, this one's 7, then 8, 9, 10, and 11, 12, all the way on the end. So you have to really follow that sequence, because you want the torque, you want to spread the when you torque it down, you want to spread like the stretch out. You don't want to confine it. It's all kinds of technical stuff. It's just what you got to do. So figure out what it is, and that's how you put it on. All in all, this wasn't a difficult job at all. I was just lazy for a long time and was putting it off, and now it's on. So what's next to do? Let's go fire her up and see how she sounds. So for this is the weather seal for here. So to do this, I'm just going to take it with me. Don't mind the mess. Here we go. So I do have the generator running, because I've got the air conditioners running, because it is 95 degrees out and I need to exercise the generator anyways. So here we go. That's my startup. Fingers crossed. outside. I'm going to run it up to 1,000 RPM. Let's see what that does. I got the Onan running. I don't know, I'm pretty happy. Gonna have to take it out for a ride. Yeah, I'm gonna go clean up my mess and get this thing put back together. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, throw them down in the comments and throw up some likes. We'll see you later.